You know the Middle East that we all see on maps today, with all those straight, sharp borders? Well, that's a pretty recent invention. And to really get what's going on in the region, we have to kind of erase those lines and look at a map that's been forgotten. The map of a single, vibrant region that for centuries was known as Bilad al-Sham.
Even its name tells the story. Just picture this. You're a traveler in the Arabian desert. It's dawn, and you're facing the rising sun in the east. Everything to your left, stretching all the way up to the horizon, that's El-Sham. It's a name that comes from the very act of journeying, a perspective that's completely tied to the land and the sky. So let me ask you this. What if those borders we see today, the ones that divide Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine, what if they just weren't there? I know today that sounds pretty radical, right? But for most of recorded history, that was just reality. It was one single connected world.
So how exactly was this world defined, if not by modern borders? That's what we're going to dig into first. And the answer, you'll see, isn't found in some old treaty. It's literally written into the landscape itself.
See, Bilad al-Sham wasn't just a random piece of land. It was this incredible living bridge that connected Africa, Asia, and Europe. Armies, traders, prophets, pilgrims, everyone crossed this territory. It was the crossroads of empires, the birthplace of faiths, a place where geography was truly destiny.
And you can literally see how nature itself carved out this region. Up north, you've got the Taurus Mountains rising up like a giant wall. To the west, the Mediterranean Sea just opens up into this vast expanse of blue. Down south, the endless sands of the Arabian desert create a totally natural barrier. And then, over to the east, the life-giving Euphrates River draws the final line. These weren't lines on a map. They were the very bones of the land, creating the absolute heart of the Fertile Crescent.
All right, so we've got this incredible, naturally unified land. The next big question is, how was it governed? Well, for centuries, it was treated as a single, powerful unit. And the story of how that actually worked is what we're diving into next.
So right from the Muslim conquest in the 630s, this whole region was run as one piece. Under the Umayyads, its importance absolutely peaked. I mean, Damascus wasn't just some regional hub, it was the capital of a global empire. And even when the centers of power moved around, like to Baghdad or later Istanbul, Bilad al-Sham stayed as this distinct, unified province. It held on to that unique identity for over 1,000 years.
So, how did they manage this huge territory? Well, the early caliphates came up with this really effective system of military districts called jund. The original 4 were based around the big cities, Damascus, Homs, Jordan, and Palestine. But, and this is the key part, these were not separate countries. They were just administrative zones inside the single province of Bilad al-Sham, set up for efficient defense and tax collection. It was a super practical system that just reinforced the region's unity for centuries. And what did this unity actually mean for the people living there? Well, it meant that a merchant from Aleppo, way up in the north, could travel all the way down to Jerusalem in the south and never once have to pull out a passport or cross a formal border. They were all just part of the same world, sharing a common Shami culture, from the food they ate to the unique way they spoke. But this world of fluid movement and shared identity, a world that had existed for over a millennium, was about to be completely shattered. We're now turning to the moment that changed everything, the Great Fracture, when lines were literally drawn in the sand and that old world was lost forever. The year is 1916. The Great War is tearing the world apart. And while that's happening, 2 European diplomats, Mark Sykes from Britain and François-Georges Picot from France, secretly meet with a map and a pencil. The lines they're about to draw will carve up the Ottoman Empire, dismantle Bilad al-Sham, and create a legacy of conflict that we're still dealing with to this very day. The consequences of that secret meeting were just devastating. I mean, look at the contrast here. On the one hand, you have the single organic region of Bilad al-Sham, and on the other, the aftermath, a shattered region, sliced up into these mandates controlled by Britain and France. These new borders were drawn purely for colonial convenience, with almost no regard for the geography, the trade routes, or the actual people who lived there.
You know, in political science, there's actually a name for this: artificial state construction. Imagine taking a beautiful, ancient, hand-woven tapestry and just hacking it into 4 rough squares with a pair of scissors. That's pretty much what happened. Communities were split apart, economic lifelines were severed, and centuries of shared history were just ignored. This single act is really a root cause of so much of the instability we've seen in the region ever since. But here's the thing. Even after all of that, the story doesn't just end with division. Because despite all the political walls that went up, the cultural heartbeat of Bilad al-Sham, it never really stopped. In our final section, we'll see how its echoes are still incredibly powerful today. Even with all the different borders, flags, and governments, this incredible shared heritage still connects the people of the Levant. Whether you're in Damascus, Beirut, Amman, or Jerusalem, you'll find the same amazing food, from kibbeh to fattoush. You'll hear the same distinct Arabic dialect, the Laha Shamia, and you'll see the same breathtaking architecture in the old city centers. This is no coincidence. It's a shared history that runs so much deeper than politics. This phenomenon actually has a name, regionalism. It's this idea that a shared identity, a kind of mental map, can stick around long after any political unity is gone. Think about it in your own life. Do you feel a certain connection to people from your broader region, even if they're from a different state or province? Well, for millions in the Levant, the idea of al-Sham isn't just a history lesson, it's a living, breathing part of who they are.
Which leaves us with one final, and I think really crucial question that gets right to the heart of this whole story. Are lines drawn on a map just a century ago really more powerful than 1,000 years of shared geography, culture, and history? It's a question that reminds us that maps can change, but some connections, they run much, much deeper. And in the Middle East, understanding those deep connections is absolutely key to understanding the world we live in today.